Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us here on a Wednesday morning. Been a busy 24 hours for us here at Spaceflight Now, as well as for SpaceX, of course, since this is their third launch across the country. Now bringing it back here to the Sunshine State of Florida with its latest Falcon 9 rocket. SpaceX began its three-launch trio back with the Starlink 17-1 mission yesterday morning over at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, successfully launching 24 Starlink satellites into a polar orbit. That, of course, was followed up by the launch of the Starship Flight 9 mission yesterday evening from Starbase, Texas, which was met with somewhat mixed results. Of course, making some improvements over some previous flights, but running into a number of obstacles along the way. If you'd like to read our write-up of that, you can find it right now on our website, spaceflightnow.com. Of course, that leads to this morning, where we have the Starlink 10-32 mission, a batch of 27 Starlink V2 mini satellites that are being added into the ever-expanding low Earth orbit constellation. Currently T-minus 56 minutes, 40 seconds, and counting ahead of the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket from the pad there. A little bit of a light breeze as things are starting to literally and metaphorically heat up here on Florida's Space Coast in preparation for this launch. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast alongside John Pisani. Adam Bernstein is out and about, getting the cameras set up and ready to track the Falcon 9 when it is in good shape to leave the pad, coming up in just about 56 minutes. If you're not already following the fellas on X, you can find them at their handles, including Michael Kane, who's at MD Kane Jr., Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC, John Pisani at John Pisani Photo. While you're out there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. And if you yourself are not on X, you can also find us over on Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky. We'll also be joined with tracking assistance for today's flight by our friends P. Karstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. Getting some nice glint off the water there as a little bit of haze at this time of morning, shooting into the sun. Not the easiest tracking, but I know our team will do their level best and bring you the best possible images of the Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its ascent off Historic Launch Complex 39A. As we're getting things rolling, I want to thank the roughly 460 of you who are watching with us live this morning. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we're getting things rolling on a Wednesday morning. A short week for some folks who had Monday off for the Memorial Day holiday, so hopefully your what probably feels like a Tuesday, but isn't very much in fact a Wednesday, is getting off on a good foot. We have a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube who make these live launch opportunities possible. So I want to thank folks like Sandra Moran, M. Teresa, Joni Mahoney, AJS, Cumulus Granatus, and many others. Jim Fowley, good morning. Mark is me too. Hello, hello. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. That's a little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space and spaceflight, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will that help to elevate your comments, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. Taking a look at the wide shot here, a beautiful morning as we're getting things going at Pad 39A. Forecast for today's launch opportunity pretty good at the start of the window, which is what SpaceX is currently targeting. Heading into this launch a window, the 45th Weather Squadron, based at Patrick Space Force Base, forecast an 85% chance for favorable weather at the start of the window. If for whatever reason SpaceX needed more time, though, the weather outlook dips down to just a 40% chance for favorable weather as we are starting to get into those seasonal afternoon thunderstorm patterns and the chance for interference from cumulus clouds, anvil clouds, and otherwise the presence of lightning would quite potentially stymie launch opportunity today. So, assuming all is going technically as planned with the rocket, SpaceX will continue to target the opening of the window with this opportunity today. Today's flight of a Falcon 9 rocket set to be the 481st in total. This will also be the 64th Falcon 9 launch of the year so far. Of those Falcon 9 launches this year, 46 of them so far have primarily been to launch Starlink satellites. This will be the 47th with Starlinks as the primary payload, the 46th dedicated Starlink mission so far this year, as, of course, Starlink 13-1 did carry 2 Starshield satellites as a rideshare. As we're getting ready to really get into the fueling process for the Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the countdown timeline. These are the nominal series of events that we're anticipating with a good fueling mode for this rocket. Of course, it all begins with the go-ahead for the start of fueling, which is anticipated around the 38-minute mark before takeoff. SpaceX does this poll electronically, so if they're in a good posture to do so, they can take this a little bit earlier. But generally speaking, that is when it happens, and when the go-ahead is given, tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket will start at the T-minus 35-minute point in time. That'll begin with liquid oxygen flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. At the same time, RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, will start flowing on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. Following that up, 30 minutes before liftoff, SpaceX will start loading a cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on the first stage. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes after. Helium is important for the Falcon 9 because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. 23 minutes out, the second stage RP-1 tank is full. And at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, the strong back chill down process gets underway. That's when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. Here at Pad 39A, we see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent, right about T minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. And that lasts just about 4 minutes before that tapers off, allowing second stage liquid oxygen to start flowing at the 16-minute mark. Moving right along, T minus 7 minutes out is when the engine chill down begins. That's when SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, help protect the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes before takeoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence. It'll start with the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise known as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. 2 minutes out, same is true on the second stage. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, we'll hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup. That means that control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. Simultaneously, the propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before takeoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines ignite as expected and are healthy, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Targeting this morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, 13:30 UTC for our friends around the world, or just about 46 minutes from now. As part of the preparation for a Falcon 9 launch, or really anything that is getting ready to take off from Florida's Space Coast, the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center has activated in support of today's mission. One of the busiest EOCs in the country, the Brevard County EOC, is top among them. Not exactly number one, but is certainly high up there since the Emergency Operations Center activates not only for every launch, but also for static fires. And of course, as we're getting into the hopefully not terribly busy hurricane season, but we'll see what Mother Nature has in store. They're obviously going to be quite busy as we get into the proper hurricane season, which I believe begins on June 1st. It's right around the corner. Yes, Sunday, June 1st is the official start to the Atlantic hurricane season, which will last until Sunday, November 30th of this year. Of course, that is just the broad spectrum of the official hurricane season. We typically start to see the majority of activity really kick into gear around August through late October is historically when we've really seen things flare up. But that's not to discount the odd and unfortunate late hurricane, as we saw with Hurricane Nicole a couple of years ago. Certainly had its time in the sun, so to speak, with the space community since Hurricane Nicole came through in the midst of the Artemis 1 campaign. And given the timing and direction and the speed, NASA opted to leave the SLS rocket out of the pad to weather the storm. Thankfully, it did just fine, and they had a successful launch of Artemis 1 not too long after. Today's Falcon 9 rocket is supported by the booster tail number 1080 in the SpaceX fleet, which will be flying for a 19th time, which means that we are not going to be seeing any movement in our frequent flyer list today. But just to recap of where we are, still have all the usual haunts that have made the top five. Not any movement since we last had a chance to update this with B1069. Got a couple launches coming up right around the corner, including the flight of the latest GPS satellite, which is Space Vehicle number 8, set to launch coming up on Friday from Space Launch Complex 40. So we'll have much more to say about that, including an interview that we did with Lockheed Martin back during the 40th Space Symposium in Colorado Springs, Colorado, to learn more about the GPS program. So looking forward to bringing that reporting to you over the course of the next couple of days, as well as hearing from other leadership with the U.S. Space Force and the national security side of SpaceX. We'll be hearing from them as well this week, and looking forward to bringing those comments to you as we learn about the last few missions that are coming up as part of the GPS-3 constellation, as Lockheed Martin is currently manufacturing and preparing to launch starting, I believe, next year, the next generation of the GPS satellites, the GPS-3Fs. Those will be launched through a mix of both SpaceX with its Falcon 9 as well as with United Launch Alliance and its Vulcan rocket. Again, we'll talk more GPS when we get later in the week. Also scheduled for Friday is another batch of Starlink satellites that are set to lift off from Vandenberg Space Force Base. That is the Starlink 11-18 mission. That'll be another afternoon flight for folks out on the West Coast. Eager to see the next Falcon 9 fly from there. Looking at a window opening about 1:24 p.m. Pacific, 4:24 p.m. Eastern, 2024 UTC on that one. Meanwhile, back here in Florida, we're just about 40 minutes away from the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket at Historic Launch Complex 39A. Today's mission will be the 101st Falcon 9 rocket to fly from this particular pad, and this will be the last launch from LC-39A before SpaceX turns it over into a configuration supporting a Crew Dragon spacecraft, and that'll be to send up the 4 astronauts that are part of the private astronaut mission known as AX-4, or Axiom Mission 4. This will not only be Axiom Space's 4th private astronaut mission to the space station, but the 4th formal private astronaut mission overall, as NASA is currently evaluating bids for private astronaut missions number 5 and 6. That'll be competition currently between Axiom Space as well as VAST. Both companies are currently working on space stations that would be potential follow-ons to the International Space Station, and are hoping to receive NASA support for those. In fact, it's part of the proving ground for VAST's first space station, which will be the Haven 1. They're preparing an uncrewed satellite demonstration called the Haven Demo that'll be testing some of their various systems and softwares, their guidance and control system, the propulsion, radios, ground station mission control. That'll all be in the loop for Haven 1. Haven Demos scheduled to launch later this summer. It was actually just yesterday that Vast announced that they have finished fully integrating and completing a vibration testing at their headquarters in Long Beach, California for the Haven demo. So look forward to covering that mission when they're able to launch it. If you'd like to learn more about the Haven 1 space station, you can stay right here on YouTube after our launch today and check out our video on the Haven 1. I had the opportunity to walk through the Haven 1 experience with Vast CEO Max Haut, talk all about that, as well as with with their lead astronaut, Drew Feustel. Currently, T-minus 36 minutes, 55 seconds and counting before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket at Pad 39A. We're just about a couple minutes away from the point at which fueling is set to start on this rocket, assuming the go-ahead was in fact given for the start of tanking by SpaceX. As we're awaiting the start of fueling, see Alan Zidak joining us from Diamond Bar, California. Richard Swanson joining us from Michigan. Let us know where you're watching from this morning. Gary Charles Aquaviva is checking in from Lake Charles Shore, or Lake Clark Shore in Florida here. Larry Grove from Port Orange. Good morning to you all. Got a nice array here. Manchester, UK, from Ghana, Biloxi, Mississippi, Aruba, Ohio, Jupiter, Florida, British Columbia, Canada. It's always wonderful to see what an international audience comes together for these launch opportunities. So appreciate you all either being up early or staying up late, depending on what time of the day it is for you and your neck of the woods around the world. And we sincerely appreciate you being here with us at Spaceflight Now for our live launch coverage today. Just past the 35-minute marker. At this point, SpaceX should be tanking their Falcon 9 rocket, though. For those of you who have been with us for any launch in particular of recent date with the Starlink program, you'll know that SpaceX has long since stopped putting out updates on the start of fueling for a typical Starlink mission. So we'll rely on the visual cues that indicate when fueling has begun. Just a moment, we'll punch in on the booster of the Falcon 9 rocket. What we're going to be looking for is the signs of a frost ring starting to form around the base of the booster, just beneath the X in SpaceX. Taking a look here now at the booster stage of the vehicle. The part of the rocket that we're going to be looking for, I know it's kind of hard to see with the sun angle being what it is, but where the strong back, the large white structure that is in the foreground as compared to the rocket, if you see where the strong back starts to taper in as you go up from the tree line, just a little bit above that point where it finishes the taper, we'll start to see that frost line form as SpaceX loads a super cold densified liquid oxygen on board the booster stage. And given the difference in temperature between that super cold LOX and the considerably warmer Florida air, we'll also start to see a little bit of vapor form in that region as well. if all is continuing on time as expected, we should start to see signs of fueling in the next couple of minutes. Again, will be a little bit harder to discern just because of the time of day and the perspective with which we're seeing the Falcon 9 rockets. So may take just a hair longer and a little bit more liquid oxygen than normal for us to really feel comfortable making the call that we're seeing frost line as we believe we are, as we should be here in the next minute or so. And it is again hard to discern, but just checking with the guys behind the scenes, and it does appear as that we're seeing some vapor there, and you can see it a little bit more clearly if you look on the left-hand side of the rocket where the bird just flew by. You start to see just a little bit of wisps of vapor that are creating a slightly different color contrast, a little bit brighter white as compared to the booster there. So, do feel comfortable saying that we are seeing signs of fueling, which means SpaceX is keying into their current T0 of 9:30 a.m. Eastern, 13:30 UTC for the launch of this Falcon 9. Time now, T minus 27 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. With less than 30 minutes to go, want to welcome in all of our new viewers who are cruising in to our live coverage from Spaceflight now. Good of you to be with us this morning. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Taking a look at our live chat, want to thank our moderators, Rick Donner and Callistia Lee, for being with us this morning. Appreciate you stopping back by after a busy day yesterday. As we continue to roll through our coverage, you can help the moderators out by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you refrain from delving into overt politics and religion, that you converse in English so that our moderators can respond appropriately. We know it's fun to type in all caps from time to time, but we ask that you kindly curtail that urge, and most importantly, they treat others with kindness and respect as we go throughout the countdown so that everyone can enjoy their time in the chat. I see Shirley Benoit sharing our coverage over on Facebook. Really appreciate that. Just about 24 minutes, 15 seconds before liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Booster supporting today's flight is B-1080, getting ready to make its 19th flight to space and back. So before we go ahead and hit that milestone, let's take a moment to talk about where this booster has been. Earlier in the broadcast, I mentioned that we're gearing up for the launch of the fourth Axiom mission to the International Space Station. As it so happens, this first booster's flight was in support of the AX-2 mission, launching the Dragon known as Freedom to the International Space Station, commanded by former NASA astronaut and current Axiom Space astronaut Peggy Whitson, who will also be the commander of AX-4. The next flight of this booster was on July 1st of 2023 when it launched the Euclid Observatory on behalf of the European Space Agency. Flight number 3 was its first Starlink mission, August 27th of 2023, followed by Starlink 6-24 on August 22nd. Another crew launch for Axiom, AX-3, lifted off on January 18th of 2024, also with the Dragon Freedom, followed up by another Dragon mission to the space station, this time a cargo Dragon with CRS-30 lifting off of Pad 40 with a touchdown back at landing zone 1. Couple of Starlink missions. You had Starlink 6-52 on April 18th and 6-62 on May 23rd. That was followed up by the Astra 1P SES-24 mission, lifting off on June 20th of last year. Another flight to the International Space Station, this time a Cygnus spacecraft with the NG-21 mission on August 4th. Then we're back to Starlink land from here to today. Starlink 10-10 on October 15th, 6-69 on November 11th, 12-1 on November 25th, 12-2 on December 23rd, 12-4 on January 13th of this year, Starlink 10-2 on February 18th, Starlink 6-80 on March 31st, and most recently Starlink 6-75 earlier this month on May 2nd. And in just about 21 and a half minutes, we'll add Starlink 10-32 to that roster of launches. Coming up on the start of the big vent here, as SpaceX will start to chill the feed lines there at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen loading. As channel member Joe Piano notes in the live chat, this will be a northeasterly trajectory mission, so nice change of pace for our friends who are up along the eastern coast of the United States. Given the time of day, it may not be the easiest mission to spot, but hopefully you'll get a decent view of the Falcon 9 rocket as it makes its ascent. So-called big vent should be starting right about now. And there it goes. Hearing an intercom announcement from over at the vehicle assembly building. With this vent underway, it's a good visual indication that SpaceX is moving along on time as expected. And again, this venting will last until about T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds ahead of second stage LOX load beginning at the 16-minute mark. Just about 17 minutes to go before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. 30 seconds remaining on the big vent. With the big vent wrapped up, we're just past the 16-minute mark, and second stage liquid oxygen load is now underway. About 14 and a half minutes to go before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. On board this vehicle are 27 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites. This will be SpaceX's 47th launch featuring Starlink satellites so far this year. Each of those optimized V2 Mini satellites clocks in at about 1,267 pounds or 575 kilograms, about 225 kilograms lighter than the previously used version of the V2 Mini. SpaceX anticipates deploying the Starlink satellites currently encapsulated in the payload fairings at the top of the rocket stack just about an hour and 4 minutes after liftoff today. So look for a confirmation from SpaceX shortly after that point on their social channels. Now T-minus 11 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. Got some folks starting to gather out on the press lawn here of the Kennedy Space Center Pad 39A site, eagerly awaiting the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket, as are we. Before we go ahead and see the next flight of a Falcon 9, let's go ahead and take just a few minutes and talk about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX. Falcon 9 rocket, of course, is the most flown vehicle for the company, standing at 70 meters or 229 feet in height with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that is made up by the vehicle's booster stage. This, as we've mentioned earlier in the broadcast, is B-1080, which is flying for a 19th time. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Today, SpaceX will be using Just Read the Instructions. Above the first stage is the vehicle's inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the vehicle as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches which attach to the vehicle's second stage. And at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until the point of stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a single modified Merlin engine, which is referred to as the Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVac engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and today it will be fired twice to place the 27 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Following the deployment of those Starlink satellites, there will be one final burn to deorbit the upper stage, driving it back into the atmosphere where it will burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which currently encapsulate the 27 Starlink satellites. These fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. As is the case with the booster, SpaceX also intends to recover the fairings, which, following atmospheric reentry, will splash down finally under the support of steerable parachutes to make their final journey back to Earth. They'll be scooped out of the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, brought back through Port Canaveral, and then turned over to the Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. A couple more folks coming out to the lawn. Beautiful day to catch a rocket launch. Some nice reflection on the water there, as we're seeing from Chuck and Jen's perspective. We'll also be joined once the rocket is airborne by our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions with tracking assistance as well. Just about 7.5 minutes before takeoff, in less than 30 seconds now, SpaceX will start flowing a little bit of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps for the engines of the booster stage that will help protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. Coming up, the next milestone will be the topping off of RP1 on the booster stage. As we're getting ready to see this Falcon 9 fly, we've talked about the vehicle itself, the booster history. Let's talk about where this rocket is going to be flying, since they have the opportunity to talk about a trajectory not often flown, supporting the Starlink constellation. Falcon 9 rocket, of course, going to be beginning its journey right where it is at Historic Launch Complex 39A. Once it is airborne, it will be flying in a northeasterly trajectory along the eastern coast of the United States. So, for our friends in the northeastern part of the Florida Peninsula, as well as up through Georgia, the Carolinas, and up further, let us know if you're able to spot the Falcon 9 as it makes its ascent. Love to see what you capture. Be sure to share that with us on social media. The booster will target a touchdown on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Following stage separation. As we mentioned as well with the payload fairings, following their separation about 3 minutes into the flight, they will fall down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean at their conclusion, supported by steerable parachutes. SpaceX doesn't often talk about how often it flies its fairing halves, but its most recent comment on them is that it did notch a 30th flight with one of its fairing halves. So they are getting up there in numbers as far as their reusability for this part of the vehicle. Once down in the waters, they'll be brought aboard a recovery vessel and then brought back through Port Canaveral, again for refurbishment and use on a future mission. Less than 5 minutes to go, and we are, looks like, getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket there.
Strong back retract has started.
Interesting to note what appears to be a new graphics package for SpaceX with its Falcon family of rockets. A different style of countdown clock than we've seen from them before. This is different from what we saw from yesterday's Starlink 17-1 mission, but looks very similar to the graphics package that was rolled out with the Starship launch from Starbase, Texas yesterday evening. See what this looks like in flight. This will be new for everybody. What is not new for everybody, though, is the difference between our clock and the SpaceX feed. Our clock is in real time. What you're seeing from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So as long as we have our ground level views of the camera, we'll be making our callouts based off real time. As you can see, the clamp arms beneath the payload fairings have opened up, and the transporter erector in our live picture, you can see a little bit more of the gap from the reclining. Nice close-up shot there showcasing the fairings as well as the retraction of the strong back, just a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 for now.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
With that call, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is now full. We are awaiting a similar call on the second stage coming up here in the next roughly 40 seconds in real time. As we come into the final minutes of the count, want to welcome a new channel member, Michael Williams, joining us with membership at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that, Michael. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And glad to see the more than 6,400 of you who are watching with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, allowing some more folks to find their way into this coverage in these final minutes.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. You're seeing the ground gas closeouts now here. This is SpaceX releasing the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad.
Ground gas closeouts.
Coming up on the final minute before flight, we'll shortly hear a call for the Falcon 9 being in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And with that call, we're now just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch, which will be happening momentarily.
LD is go for launch.
And with that call, we're coming up on 30 seconds ahead of the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. Carrying 27 Starlink satellites on board. "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-32 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. And some great tracking views from our team as the rocket continues to climb away from Florida's Space Coast. Coming up, teams will be throttling down as it passes through max Q. Nice little ring there. Next, teams will be thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine before its ignition.
MVAC chill has started.
Good call there from SpaceX. Really nice view of the ascent here. We're coming up on a few milestones happening fairly quickly back to back. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. Payload fairings will deploy just before the 3-minute mark. We're less than 10 seconds to MECO now.
Nominal trajectory.
Good nominal trajectory. Now MECO. Stage separation.
Stage separation confirmed.
And MVAC ignition.
MVAC startup.
Good views there. Payload fairings should have deployed. Hard to see though in
Fairing separation confirmed.
tracking cameras. We see there from the onboard cameras a good release of those. exposing the Starlink satellites to the vacuum of space. One of those fairing halves visible just off of the engine nozzle there on the left-hand side. Really nice view of the coast as well. About 3.5 minutes into this mission so far. Our next milestone coming up is the start of the first stage entry burn. That'll call upon 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 rocket to dramatically slow the vehicle down. That entry burn will last about 27 seconds in total. Now 4.5 minutes into the flight. The booster has passed its apogee, starting to make its descent now towards the drone ship.
Both
Just
vehicles
read the
continue to follow a nominal trajectory.
just read the instructions. And as you just heard, a good trajectory call on both the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. We're just a minute away from the start of the entry burn based off the SpaceX timeline. We'll continue to scan the skies with our tracking cameras to see if we can spot the entry burn from the ground, but given how bright it is right now, it may be a bit too difficult to spot, but we'll do our best.
Entry
Stage
burn.
1 FCS is saved.
A little bit of cross chatter there. We can see the entry burn is underway, and a nice visual of the engines that are currently burning on the first stage.
Stage 1, entry burn shutdown.
Nice little demonstration of the change in the graphics package here, bringing out
Trajectory
the
nominal.
altitude meter and factoring back in the representation of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster. We'll likely see that again, I'm assuming now, with the start of the landing burn, which will begin at about T plus 7 minutes and 48 seconds, so in less than a minute from now.
Stage 1, transonic.
Just about 10 seconds to the start of the landing burn. You can see the graphic has changed again.
Stage 1, landing burn.
Stage
Stage
2 is
one,
in
landing
terminal
leg deploy.
guidance.
Stage
And a
1,
good
landing confirmed.
landing for our 19th time of B1080.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
And we just saw the graphic for Seco. That was second stage engine cutoff. Didn't hear the call out for that, but did see that graphic briefly flash across the top left corner of the screen. And assuming the upper stage did enter into a good parking orbit, the upper stage will now coast until T plus 54 minutes and 56 seconds. That'll be followed by a brief 1 second burn. And then the Starlink satellites will deploy at about T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 19 seconds post liftoff. A beautiful way to start a Wednesday morning. Lots of folks around the Space Coast presumably got a nice view, including this group of folks near the countdown clock. And as we're getting our launch replays ready to take one last look back at the Falcon 9 rocket as it made its ascension from Historic Launch Complex 39A, let's go ahead and take a moment to cruise through our launch stats, see where things currently stand with SpaceX and other happenings around orbital spaceflight. Today's mission was the Today was the 19th flight of Falcon 9 at booster 1080. This was the 481st launch of a Falcon 9 rocket to date, marking the 64th of the year so far. This was SpaceX's 420th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. Over the last 365 days, this was SpaceX's 143rd orbital launch, the 112th for SpaceX from Pad 39A, and the 206th overall orbital launch from Pad 39A as well. Moving on to our bar chart, here's a look at the SpaceX launches year over year. As you can see, 64 on the year so far, passing 2022 on its way to catching the total of 2023 probably in the next couple of months. Probably by the end of summer, we'll be pretty close to that point. Moving on to some recovery stats. Today's touchdown of B1080 on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions marked the 122nd successful landing on that drone ship, the 364th drone ship landing overall, and the 453rd overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 45th orbital flight from the Sunshine State of Florida this year. That marked the 68th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 74th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 116th overall orbital launch around the globe. There have been 3 failures on the year so far, and here is where our pie chart now currently stands. I'm going to be adding a couple more missions to that pie chart by the time you see it next. Coming up just around the corner, we've got a launch from China, an asteroid sample mission, Tianwen 2, launching on a Long March 3B rocket. I believe that's set to happen later on this afternoon, if I got my times right. Then tomorrow, Rocket Lab with its full stream ahead mission. That's getting ready to lift off from Mahia, New Zealand, in support of their customer. That is Black Sky with its Gen 3 satellite, its latest Gen 3 satellite, heading to a mid-inclination circular orbit. Then, of course, we're tracking a pair of Falcon 9 rocket launches from here in Florida, as well as one over in California. On Friday, we've got the GPS 3-7 Space Vehicle number 8 mission, and then that'll be followed by the Starlink 11-18 flight later on that day. So lots to look forward to in the realm of space flight in the next few days. So if you haven't already, now's a great time to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so that you're not left in the lurch when we do start a new broadcast or post new video here on the channel. Taking a look back at our live chat, want to thank Catherine Katie Cat for a $2 super chat. Really appreciate that support today. As we're thinking back on last night's Starship launch and the milestones that they achieved and the ones that are still left on the table, I'm curious what our community here thinks will be the timeline for the Starship Flight 10 mission. Go ahead and sound off in the live chat. Let us know if you think that'll happen sooner rather than later and what exactly sooner might mean in this case. And we do have our launch replays ready for you now. We're going to start with our fixed view of the rocket launch from Pad 39A. Given the distance between our camera and the rocket and the timing of these clips, a couple of them are going to go off before the sound actually reached our microphones. So being told behind the scenes there will actually be no sound. So just infuse your imagination on in the memory of the rocket rumbles. Going now to the wide shot from the press site. Quite beautiful weather for Florida's Space Coast, seeing the rocket launch today. Hope everyone who was along the path of the flight had an opportunity to see it, or if not, enjoyed the views from our tracking team as this rocket took off. Looking now from the turn basin perspective. is a look now from Chuck and Jen Briggs' perspective up in Titusville. Nice look here at the expanding plume as the rocket climbs into the thinner part of the atmosphere. And start to see it change shape a little bit as we're approaching the point of MECO right there. You'll see the stage separation and the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine as well. Little pop there for MVAC. And you could just make out the burst there from the booster stage. Those are the cold gas thrusters. Moving now to our Adam Bernstein's tracker view from the press site. The pullback of the strong back and a liftoff of the Falcon 9. Of course, at this point, the Brevard County EOC has deactivated their launch operations support team, given the good flight of the Falcon 9 this morning. And one last look at the launch from our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and his tracking camera from the south. As we're coming to the close of this clip, want to thank our team for their support of this launch today. Big thanks to Callistia Lee and Rick Donner in the live chat for helping us out with moderation duties. Big thanks to Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, whose replay you were just watching, as well as to Chuck and Jen Briggs, who you saw a little bit earlier. Thanks as well to our photography team of John Pisani, Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane for their continuous hard work, making these live launch opportunities look so darn good. And thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast. And most importantly, thanks to you for your time and attention with this launch. As we mentioned, we've got a few more coming up in the back half of the week, including the launch of the very next GPS satellite mission that touches all of our lives. So look forward to bringing you coverage of that in the days to come. For now, though, we'll leave you with one last look at the vehicle assembly building. And to all of you out there, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time. And until then, my friends, bye-bye.